Hello and welcome back to PolyToots. So we're just going to be carrying on with the texturing of this thing. The only thing I've realized from the last recording is that I did not texture the cloth on the handle, and so that still doesn't exist in this recording either. So I'll probably just do that off camera, and when we come to the next video, I'll be sure to have it in there. So at the moment, what I'm doing on screen might look a bit confusing, but essentially I did not like the darkness of the grating, so I'm just going through and trying to find a way to lighten it up. And what I ended up doing was basically just creating little highlights rather than plastering the whole thing in, you know, like one solid color. I probably should have used thinner lines, to be honest, but I didn't hate the result, so, you know, it's kind of okay. And so here, just polishing up a bit of the outline and then adding in a piece that I had forgotten about earlier. This will be some sort of like metal claspy type thing. So I'm just drawing the outline for it now. And there'll be a few other areas where I will do the same thing. And so this comes back to what I was saying in the previous video, in that, you know, although ideally, you know, you would want to come at something like this with a very methodical approach, in that you do all of your lines and then your colors and then your shading. But oftentimes, unless it's just me, maybe I'm the only one out there that has this problem, but I find that you just keep going back and forth. Like, you might be 90% finished with your texture, and then you'll just see something that you'll want to add in, and it might be part of, you know, a very earlier stage. And so, to my mind, I think that's completely normal. So, you know, I wouldn't worry about that. The idea is just to keep plugging away at it. You know, the more you texture, the closer it becomes to being finished. So don't get too caught up on, you know, all of your lines have to be correct right off the bat. So long as you keep all of these important things in their own layers, it's very easy just to undo or change them anyway. And so what I've been doing on screen while I've been rambling on is adding in a bit of the metal underneath these panels. It's where it's kind of eroded away at the paint, I suppose. And I'm doing a little highlight here for the edges, and I realized that this was just going to take way too long, and it was a bit fiddly to try and match it up exactly with where I had drawn the gray of the metal. And so what I ended up doing instead was actually just freezing the invert of that layer, and then grabbing a brush, and now I can do a similar thing, but I don't have to worry about accidentally painting over anything else. So, you know, it will only hit the metal layer, which is pretty cool. And here I am, I'm just tidying up a couple of the highlights. I realized they were a bit thick, and I think I do this in other places later on as well. It's just where I had initially painted in that sort of base highlight, it was just too thick, basically. So yeah, just a quick tidy up of that, and then adding in some darker areas just to mix it up a bit. And then while I still have this dark color, I'm just with the brush that allows me to just do, you know, very light, gentle strokes. I'm just going over each panel and just adding in a bit of a darker shade just to break it up a bit. Seems to work pretty nice in my opinion, at least. But of course, I mean, I would say that if you want it, you could also use some sort of texture with this, or a different brush, you know, like some sort of grainy type thing or some kind of stencil, and that could look pretty nice. But for me, I think for the majority of this, it's mostly just using the default brushes that come with 3D Coat, you know, just like your standard round brushes. And so then yeah, here again, just trying to add in these comic lines, I suppose, wherever I think I need to. And again, hopping back to highlights and other stuff. In fact, I think earlier you saw me painting in the gray in this area here, and technically that's a base color thing. You know, if you are trying to come at this from a robotic kind of way, that should have been done a long time ago, but it's fine. It's totally fine, unless it's not fine, unless an actual full-time texture artist wants to come and correct me on that. I did just say that I was mostly using the default brushes for this, but I have actually just swapped over to like a weird speckle dust, I suppose. It is still one of the defaults, but it's not, you know, your regular round brush. And I'm using this with the method that I talked about before, where you can basically paint between two colors or one of two colors, and you can access that by pressing the C key on your keyboard. And so I'm just going around all the metal areas and I'm just giving them like a light brush. It essentially just adds in a little bit of noise and grain. It's, you know, it's a very minor thing, but it's quite nice. And from here I am just adding in like a little bit more of a highlight, like almost a pure white, just here and there, just to make it sort of pop out. And I do believe here is where I first hop into the smart materials. Well, not first, because we made our own with the comic lines, but I'm using some of 3D Coat's default smart materials. Not this one. This one's a bit of a leaky one, but I wanted some sort of just some grunge, basically. I mean, everybody puts grunge on everything, so, you know, why not? And these are going into their own layer, and I can't remember which one that I chose specifically for this. Not that it matters really. I mean, it is just sort of grunge, basically, you know, it's dirt and grime. And I use one mostly for the edges, and I'm using a lighter color for that, and then I'm using another one which I'll just plaster around mostly on the panels, and this one is a darker color, you know, as if to say that it is more like some sort of stain or dirt that has built up over time. And I think lastly, I do play about with some scratches, although I don't think they really made too much of a difference. There was some pop here and there, like, you know, I wouldn't say that it did nothing, but it was very minimal, but, you know, still pretty nice. So yeah, I think in conclusion, there was 3 of the smart materials that I used here. There was 2 of the dirt ones, and then a scratch one. And you can see me here just trying to sort of plaster this scratch one like everywhere. There are some areas where it won't hit, and there are some areas where it hits a little too much, so you do want to come in afterwards and clean it up. And this is another area where I'm just drawing the outline of some other piece that was missing, similar to that metal clamp type thing that I had on the corner. And so this is just like a weird panel that's actually eroded away. And this one is in the original red loot box, and I quite liked it, so I did decide to copy that. And then here I have just noticed that of course this lid will open, and so I don't want the ambient occlusion to be there, so I am just painting that out, which hopefully if you've seen the previous videos you will understand and know how to do. And again, just, you know, sketching in another piece of whatever that probably should exist there. Oh, actually, that does remind me, one thing that I realized that another thing that I realized that I missed is on the back of this loot box, there is actually 2 metal struts, which I don't have in mind, but I'll take care of that when we come to the next video. And what I'm actually going to do is basically just grab the 2 metal pieces that I'm working on now, and I'm just going to rotate them around and stick them on the back, and that should be fine. For this portion here, it might look a bit confusing, like it might look like I'm painting in some highlight, but I'm actually removing what was there on the grey layer. so that I can come in again afterwards and paint in on the red layer. And the reason that I had to remove it from the grey was just because of my layer bordering. And this is where I actually start to introduce some of those like really bright highlights, like the at the very edges of things, just pretty much with a pure white little brush. I find it just really helps things pop out. For these areas here, I know I keep going over them, like I'll do them dark and then light and then dark and then light. I don't really know why, so you know, it is what it is. Now for these, I have just made them into a new layer, and it's basically just a glow. And the way that this will work in game is once you open it up, the glow actually stops, so that's just a little something we can animate. And if you set the layer to emissive, I think I do it in a second, because you know at the moment it's on standard blend. You could just change that over to some sort of emissive, and so later on when it comes to the exports, we can actually label that and have it exported separately, which is pretty cool. Otherwise it's no biggie, you know, it is just a basic color on one layer. And again, just coming in with some little highlights if I see an area that could do with a little bit of pop. And I think also at this point, I'm doing a lot of changes just on one layer. I think I've just called the layer polish, which is pretty lazy of me, you know. At the start of this tutorial, I was talking about keeping things separated in different layers, but then I guess I broke that rule, and now I feel like it's most of the way there, so I've just made a new layer on top, and that's where I'm just putting almost everything, like the highs and lows, different color tints, just to basically polish it up. I don't necessarily recommend working this way, especially if you're working with others, but if you know what it is that you want, like you have a very specific end goal, then I don't see why not. Like, you might as well make your life a little bit easier. And so at this point there isn't much else left to talk about. I'm mostly just refining some things, adding in highlights, different tints. There's not much to it. For the underside of this, again, I am just working all on the same layer, which, you know, it's up to you if you want to do that or not. There's not too much to say about this, except for the bit which I'll get to in a minute, is this still needs the crisscross grating that we use on the other side of this, and also on the flippy outy bits. But my UVs for this underside of the lid are actually quartered, so they're mirrored 4 times. So I couldn't do the crisscross arrangement, and instead I have to go with just a multitude of straight lines, which I'm talking about, but I'm not actually doing on screen yet. It will happen eventually. I guess for now I'm just trying to create a bunch of similar-ish texture to what we see on the top, but again, it's all happening on the same layer, so it probably made more sense for me to do bits of this earlier on rather than leaving it until now, because the laziness within me essentially just couldn't be bothered to go back through all the layers that I have done, making sure that my new area that I'm painting on here is cohering to those new layers, so that's why I'm just doing it all on the same layer. I'm not trying to match it completely with the top, by the way, because the underside of this does actually look different on the original model. So I'm just doing my best, basically, just to put in some quick variants, some splotches here and there. And then I will also use the smart materials again. But I get some pretty strange results, which hopefully we'll see in a second. Okay, yeah, so here I am now trying to use some smart materials, and when I start to paint, there is something very strange going on, and it's essentially just to do with layer order. And I'm not entirely sure why, to be honest. Like, I can't quite work it out, but what I ended up doing was just putting all of this on the existing dirt layer that I already had, like the one that I was already using for the rest of it. But I still don't quite understand the logic behind why it behaves this way regardless, because it should just be essentially like an alpha overlay texture type thing. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure. It's a good job you came to me to learn all this stuff, isn't it? Yeah, now for the chain, because we did our ambient occlusion bakes and the curvature, it does not take the alpha of that into account, so it will just bake the whole mesh. So I am just removing the ambient occlusion and the curvature from the chain, which in hindsight, the way that I'm doing it now is, it's okay, but not ideal. What I should have actually done was frozen the unpainted pixels and then removed the ambient occlusion and the curvature, so that it would have actually stayed on the painted pixels of the chain. But it's such a small, tiny object that when I realized my little boo-boo, it wasn't the end of the world. One thing I did realize was that I forgot to texture the cloth handle on this, and so as of the time of recording, I still haven't done that. I think I mentioned that in the beginning. I might be getting amnesia. Yeah, but anyway, that is the end of this. I hope it was of some use and not so speedy that you couldn't learn much, but I think as I keep saying throughout, texturing is it's a very fluid process, and there's no way that I would have sat down and done a real-time 4-hour recording. Maybe at some point in the future I could do live streams with you guys, and you can have questions for me there in real time about how I would do stuff, and you know, these things can last hours at a time, but yeah, for the things that I'm going to upload, no, I should try to keep it short and sweet. So yep, anyway, that is it for this part. The texturing is done. I am going to just fix some stuff like the cloth handle off screen, and we'll be back in the next video where we will be exporting everything. I am going to drop it into 3ds Max just to attach some things together, and then we're going to throw it into Unity, and we'll start doing all the animations and the particles and all of that good stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.